Yo, we step up in the scene, check your engine is clean. DPF guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold. It's like this, we clean up your flow. Now your engine is gliding. It's time to hit the road.
Well, hello, everybody. Let me get this out of my way. Use my coaster. Okay, welcome, everyone. Hopefully, a few people that were live on TikTok with me would be joining us. If you are, thank you very much. Make sure that you give us a subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are joining us there. But thank you for tuning in to DPF Guys Live. Before we tune into today's session, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DPFguys so you don't miss any of our content. If you're watching this somewhere else, head over to YouTube to join the live action. I'm James from DPF Guys, your go-to expert for diesel after treatment services. Whether you're an owner-operator, God bless you all, you guys are the warriors of the roads, manage a fleet, or run a large or small repair shop, we've got the knowledge and we've got the solutions to keep your trucks running clean and compliant. So what do we have today? An action-packed session covering some of the most common and some uncommon diesel issues you might face, including why your Cummins 6.7 DPF keeps clogging even after a fresh cleaning. Hint, it's probably not the filter's fault. How to prevent DPF issues when your truck sits for weeks or even months in the shop. You know, I never understand why these people come here and they're like, yeah, my truck was in the shop for 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks. And I'm like, don't these shops realize that if your truck's not on the road, you're basically starving? You know, it's one of the things that we really pride ourselves in is, you know, it is predictable but fast turnaround. We don't want to rush, but we've got things down pat where you can come in on a Monday and get this work all done and be out of there on a Tuesday. So what are some simple tips that can save you big headaches down the road if your truck is sitting idle either at a shop or being parked for a while? And then, you know, I got a question about, you know, show us how the entire DPF system works from turbo all the way to the tailpipe. We're going to go over that. What about those gasoline particulate filters or GPFs? We'll talk about the new emissions technology showing up in vehicles like the Ford Maverick. Why another guy with a PACCAR MX-13 is still showing high soot levels even after a DPF cleaning and sensor replacement. Plus one fix most people overlook. Does DEF actually put ammonia in the air? The real answer might surprise you. What causes a DPF to clog so badly your engine sputters and dies, and what to do before it leaves you stranded. What about seeing smoke during a regen? That's never normal. We'll break down what's really going on. And the environmental impact of DEF systems and plastic jugs. Is it as bad as some people think? And last but not least, from my good friend and partner, Jeremy, what to look for when buying a used F-250 diesel and how to avoid costly DPF and DOC problems. Do you have any questions? Drop them in the comments below or text or call us at 404-999-1361. You can even text or call us right now. Now, if you call, you're going to be talking to some AI-powered stuff. Actually be talking to Lynn Diesel, and she's very friendly, but she is a computer. But you can call us even right now and or text us, and somebody will get back to you. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But if you're up and want to leave us a message and then have us get back to you later, that's perfectly fine. Quick note, remember, always consult your mechanic for any specific issues to make sure that, yes, we're trying to give you the best advice possible, but obviously your truck's not in front of us. And I want to make sure that the advice that we're giving you is is good. And we're not telling you something, not assuming something that we don't know. So, definitely talk to your mechanic before you do anything, or come see us and one of our mechanics will talk to you. Any pricing that comes up during this conversation is for reference only and not an official quote. All right, now that we got all that stuff done, let's get to work here. Question number one, let's pull this baby up. This comes in from TikTok. Had filters cleaned on a Cummins engine 2 weeks later. Regen light comes on. Did regen. Now light comes on every day. Think cleaning filters is a waste of time. So yeah, I get why it seems like the cleaning didn't help. But the problem isn't the filters. It's what's happening upstream in your engine. So this person does have a Cummins 6.7 engine, and that's a very common engine in a Freightliner M2 box truck, International 4300 box truck, Ford F750, guess what? Box truck. And of course, the newer Hinos, also box trucks. And so this is almost certainly a known issue that happens like clockwork at about 250,000 miles. The 250,000 mile injector failure in a Cummins 6.7. Cummins is a great engine. That 6.7 is a decent engine, but its injectors have a very predictable failure point right around 250,000 miles. When your injectors fail, they overfuel the cylinders, dumping excess fuel into the exhaust system. And the excess fuel messes up with the fuel-air mixture, and it causes two major problems that will destroy your emissions system fast, and probably other stuff as well, like that dumping too much fuel in the cylinders will eventually damage the engine. But we're talking about emissions here. One, you'll get massive soot buildup that overwhelms your DPF, DOC, and EGR system in as little as a few hundred miles. Believe it or not, when things are bad, you'll be lucky if you make it 400 or 500 miles once you get this taken care of. Excessive exhaust temperatures that can crack your DPF and will crack your DPF on these 6.7s and permanently damage the DOC. And why does your DPF light keep coming back on? In your case, cleaning the filters wasn't a waste of time, but because your engine is still overfueling due to the injectors, the system is clogging back up at an accelerated rate. And by accelerated, I'm talking about redonkulously accelerated. So, you'll barely be able to make it around the block before your filter plugs up again. That's why your regen light is coming on every day. It's trying to keep up with the huge amount of soot your engine is producing, but it's fighting a losing battle. Also, the excess soot from bad injectors doesn't just clog your DPF and DOC, it also builds up in your EGR system. Your EGR cooler and EGR valve become heavily coated with carbon, reducing flow and leading to even more performance and emissions issues. The EGR pressure sensors inside the cooler can also get clogged, leading to incorrect readings and false diagnostics. The hardest part is there's no codes to confirm it. And I've gotten into kind of semi-heated arguments with mechanics that aren't aware of this. They'll say there's no codes. It can't be the injectors. You must have cleaned the DPF wrong. So the toughest thing about these failing injectors is they rarely throw any fault codes. That means a diagnostic scan won't always confirm the problem. Instead, you have to trust the symptoms, and they're pretty clear. Again, 6.7 Cummins in a Freightliner M2, International 4300, Ford F750, or one of the newer Hinos with the Cummins 6.7. You're going to see very clogged or cracked DPF filters, or both, clogged and cracked. Face plugged or soot-packed DOC. Now, there's so much soot coming out, it basically gets hung up in the DOC before it even makes its way to the DPF. A severely clogged EGR coolers or the delta P or pressure differential sensors up in your EGR, clogged up EGR valves. They're all classic signs that your injectors are dumping too much fuel into the system. So what do you need to do next? Hate to tell you this, but replace all 6 injectors. Now, I know you could pull the injectors off, you could take them someplace or send them someplace to get tested, and they'll say, well, injector 1 and 4 is bad, and but if one injector of the 6 is bad, the other 5 are coming along right behind it. So I tell people it's not worth the $400 or $500 each spend to get the injectors tested, because you're going to spend the money to take them off. You're going to buy 1 or 2 new injectors, put them back in, and now the other injectors are going bad, weeks or a couple months afterwards, and you're doing the same thing all over again. So replace all 6 injectors. Now, I know it's easy for us to say because, I'm like, hey, buddy, replace the injectors. What's the big deal? And you're like, they're $300-$400 a piece. Just for the injectors is going to cost you $2,500. Injector cups is going to be a few $100 more. Having someone, you're going to be $4,000 or $5,000 into this, if not more, before you're all said and done. But that's just the nature of the beast. So If your Cummins 6.7 is at 250,000 miles or more, it's not optional. You got to do it. You need new injectors now to stop the damage. Um, Now, if you'd been using an additive that specifically does like Clean Air Fleet or something similar that would get the water out of your fuel system, because water can damage the injectors over time, and also lubricate the injector parts. And um, another thing you can do, and I don't want to sound like I'm trying to just shill for Clean Air Fleet, but the stuff they do is really good. They also have a filtration system that will filter your fuel down to 1 micron. It keeps all that particulate matter, all that, basically sand and gravel or whatever. Not really sand and gravel, but those little tiny abrasive pieces that are in the fuel system, keeps them out of the injectors, will have the injectors last much longer. That's one way preventatively. So if you just bought a brand new M2, use Clean Air Fleet or something similar. That will prevent, well, again, it's going to happen eventually, but maybe it doesn't happen at 250,000 miles. Maybe it happens at 400,000 miles. But yeah, so the only thing to do if you've got a truck that's doing this is replace all 6 injectors at about 250,000 miles. If you've been noticing these problems cropping up, and you've got 250, 300, in that ballpark, you have failing injectors. Another thing, stop forcing regens. You're just burning more fuel and making the problem actually worse. Now, a forced regen is if you're stuck on the road and you're 50 miles from home, yeah, get a forced regen. It's cheaper than a tow truck, but it's not a permanent solution. This is temporary, designed to limp you home, basically. Inspect the EGR cooler and the EGR valve. If you're dealing with a dirty DPF on a truck with a Cummins 6.7, it's likely that your EGR cooler and EGR valve needs some TLC. If they're heavily clogged, they may also need cleaning or even replacement. Not always, but sometimes if you let it go so long, that soot will turn basically into a lump of coal that cannot be gotten out of that thing. And the soot has basically made itself at home inside your EGR cooler, and it's not coming out. So, but if you get it clean before that happens, it won't happen. Once the injectors are replaced, clean or replace your DPF. Hopefully not your DOC. Clean and replace your DPF. Clean your DOC. And if your DPF had been cracked for a long time, you may need to get your SCR cleaned as well because it's probably full of soot. Take a peek at your tailpipe all the time. Make sure that if you have a truck with emissions on it, make sure you don't see any black soot on your tailpipe. If you've got to come in 6.7 and you're seeing some regen codes and your tailpipe is also black, that means that your DPF is cracked. So plan on getting a new DPF as well as possibly getting your SCR cleaned. So the DPF is not a problem. The cleaning, of course, if it was done properly, which hopefully it was, is not a problem. It's an injector problem. If you don't replace your injectors, you're just throwing money at temporary fixes that won't last. So if you're dealing with this, or if you know somebody who is, call us at 404-999-1361. Again, call us at 404-999-1361 anytime, day or night, and we'll walk you through the best next steps before your system takes on even more damage. I wish I had better news for the people with a truck with a Cummins 6.7 engine, but it is just the nature of the beast. If you're shopping for a Freightliner M2 or you're shopping for a box truck and it's got 250,000 miles on it, it's still a good truck, but set aside about $5,000, $5 or $6,000 to take care of the injectors, get the DPF cleaned. Once you got that done, you can almost guarantee that truck is going to run like a top for another 250,000 miles. But if you don't do that, it's likely the reason they're selling the truck in the first place is because of these emissions issues. And these emissions issues are being caused entirely by the injectors. A lot of dealerships will have a 6.7, have an M2 International 4300, Ford F750, Hino on the lot. And what they do is they'll do a forced regen on it, burn all the soot off. So you take it for a test drive of 5-6 miles. It seems pretty good. But, 400 or 500 miles later, you're basically back unhappy. So just be aware of that. All right, what do we have for number 2? And this is from our friend Trucker Girl 21. Hey, Trucker Girl, if you do see this, we did the oil sample on your truck, and we're going to be doing a video going through those oil samples. And the good news is you got green lights and everything. Your truck is healthy. But we're going to go through those oil samples and talk about your engine. So Trucker Girl 21 asks, what can I do to prevent DEF issues while my truck is in the shop for a period of time so I don't have DPF issues when work is complete? And this is one of the situations where she might have some, substantial work being done. Maybe the truck is in the shop for weeks or months. And what can you do to, kind of keep things good? So it's a good question. The answer depends really on how long your truck is going to be sitting. If it's just going to be someplace for, a few days or even a couple of weeks, you likely won't have any major issues. But if it's going to be down or parked, your truck's going to be down or parked for any number of months or even years, you need to take some preventative steps so you don't run into DEF, DPF, or exhaust related problems when you fire everything back up again. Number one, sip your soup. I tell you, it's miso chicken soup. Miso tasty. All right. So before you take off, turn your truck back on, check your DEF before hitting the road. If your truck has been sitting for an extended period of time, test your DEF before going back in the road. DEF is really two ingredients, very simple, 67.5% deionized water. Deionized water is just a fancy term for completely distilled water, where they take all the minerals out of it, so it's just H2O, and 32.5% urea. And urea isn't cow piss, as a lot of truck drivers like to call it. It's, yes, there is urea in your urine, but it's not. This is there's only like 2 or 3% urea in pee. This is the nitrogen portion of urea. But what happens is over time, water can evaporate, throwing off the concentration. If the urea concentration is too low, your truck may throw DEF quality codes, which could lead to a derate, even though the DEF might look fine. You can test DEF by using a DEF refractometer, and I'll show that to you right here. We do sell these. All right, 15, 20 bucks. I recommend that everybody has one in their truck. Doesn't take batteries, lasts a lifetime, and can save you some money with diagnostics. If you do have some emissions issue, test your DEF before you go to the dealership or the mechanic. You may just have bad DEF. So if the truck has been sitting for months or years, I would recommend draining the DEF completely, because DEF does not last forever. Even in ideal conditions, it has a shelf life of about 2 years. If the truck is sitting in high temperatures, the DEF breaks down faster, sometimes lasting less than a year before it degrades. For long-term storage, it's best to drain the DEF tank completely and refill with fresh DEF before hitting the road again. Keep your DEF tank full if your truck is parked for weeks or months. If you know your truck will be sitting, but not for too long, fill your DEF tank before storing it to reduce air exposure and slow down the evaporation of DEF. Reduce or prevent crystallization inside the DEF lines and pump. And if you leave your tank half empty, evaporation can throw off the DEF concentration, leading to DEF quality codes and potential injector issues, DEF injector, DEF doser issues when you start your truck. What else can you check? Check your fuel water separator before restarting. Condensation builds up when a truck sits, and if too much water gets into the fuel system, it can clog filters and damage your injectors. Of course, you want to use something like Clean Air Fleet. That will really, really help with the water buildup. Drain the water from your fuel water separator before starting the engine to prevent fuel system contamination. Also, if your truck has been sitting, it's always good to inspect for exhaust leaks before starting it back up again. Sitting for a long time can sometimes lead to small leaks in your exhaust system that may go unnoticed until they start causing regen issues. Check for leaks on the downpipe from the turbo, especially if you have a bellows downpipe. I think it looks like an accordion. These can develop hairline cracks because of the metal is basically wrinkled up, causing some weak spots in it, and can get tiny cracks in it. And those, even a hairline crack can prevent a truck from properly regenerating because that exhaust heat is not going where it should go. Inspect all your clamps and gaskets on the DOC, DPF, SCR to ensure there's no leaks disrupting exhaust flow. Even a teensy tiny small exhaust leak before the after treatment system can throw off your regen process, making your DPF clog up much faster. Check for DEF crystal buildup on the injectors and lines. and the DEF crystallization can normally be flushed off with just plain water. Warm water works best. But it's good to get that stuff off. It can be a little corrosive. And also, if you get a bunch of crystallization, it can hide other problems. So get the crystallization off so you can see if there's any leaks or anything weird that you want to take a look at. If the truck has been sitting for a long time, inspect the DEF injector or doser and lines for any crystallization before starting it up. Crystals form when a small amount of DEF dries up inside the system, which can clog the injectors and prevent proper DEF dosing. Normally, when the DEF starts flowing, it will dissolve that crystallization, but it can be really, it can be easy to find it and get it out of there before you worry about that. If you see any buildup, clean it off before restarting the truck to prevent injector failures. So there you have it. If your truck is going to only sit for a short period, I don't think you need to really even worry about it. But if it's going to be down for several months or longer, take these steps. Test to replace your DEF before getting back on the road. If sitting for months or years, drain the DEF completely and refill it. Keep your DEF tank full for shorter term storage to prevent evaporation and crystallization. Drain any water from your fuel water separator before starting. Check for exhaust leaks, especially the turbo downpipe and after treatment gaskets. Inspect the DEF injector and lines for any crystallization buildup before running the engine. And a little preventative maintenance can save you thousands in emissions repairs down the road. But if you need help with any of this, you know what to do. Call us, 404-999-1361. Call us, 404-999-1361. Or you can text us as well, and we'll help you get things sorted out. And of course, if you're far away, there's only so much we can do for you, but we can give you some advice and some guidance. But if you need to come see us, book a load to Atlanta and come check us out, and we will definitely do everything we can to help you out. I'm going to quick check to see if we have any chats that came in here. Sweet, we actually do. Hey, USA Trucking, welcome aboard, everybody. Hey, oh man, so Michael Whitley, this is actually USA Trucking, shout out to you. Thanks for watching. RL Rifle, hello to you as well. Big shout out to everybody that has said hi. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm super excited. I'm thrilled that you're here. And so Michael asked the question, have you ever seen a diesel run away? I've seen my ex-wife run away. No, I've seen video of it, but I've never seen it in person. I don't think I do want to see it in person because that looks like an ugly mess. Have you seen a diesel run away? I don't know. I think I've talked to a mechanic that talked about a runaway diesel, but man, that sounds like a scary, scary thing. So no, I have not seen one. Michael, I've not seen a diesel run away. And I don't know if I want to, but I would love to hear a story if you've seen it. This is one we actually got asked in live. So Cummins X15, 110 miles per gallon, and mine is 100. This is about how much DEF you should consume per 100 miles. And so I guess the question would be if you go 100 miles, how much diesel do you burn? If you're burning a gallon of DEF for every 100 miles, that sounds a little high. Now, I would have to check. I can check with my Cummins guy tomorrow on Monday. But, the rule of thumb is 2 to 3%. So for every 100 gallons of diesel, you would normally be burning 2 to 3 gallons of DEF. Now, it's feasible that maybe the newer trucks are consuming more. I would be really interested in seeing what your diagnostics looks like and what your ppm or parts per million of NOx that's coming off the engine. And I'm wondering if your truck is producing more NOx than normal or, what we're used to. But I think that's something that I would actually like to do a little research in and see if what you're seeing for getting 100 or 110 miles per gallon for your DEF, it really should be 300 or 400. Is that normal? Maybe it's normal for that engine, but I am not certain. But anyway, so keep the questions coming. I'm gonna turn these off for a second and go back to our other questions. What do we have here? We're on question number 3. If you have any other thing, if you're watching this live, want to fire a question at me, I'd love it. That'd be super cool. All right. This is a good one. I really appreciate this one. Number 3. Also came in from TikTok. What most people don't know is how the DPF system works as a whole. Maybe you can do a small diagram on that to explain how it works. In fact, I want to quick check my audio here. Hang on a second. Cool. I just want to make sure my microphone is working. So I didn't have time to make a diagram, but I'm going to do that. We should put one on our website and really, really explain this thing, because I think people, once you understand that, you realize it's not that complicated. Once you actually see how have it explained to you, which I'm more than happy to do. If you ever want to come by the shop and have us walk you through the process, just give us a call or a text at 404-999-1361. We'd love to have guests, with a little bit of warning though. So how does the DPF system work? Here is a breakdown. So a lot of people know that the DPF, or the diesel particulate filter, is there to trap soot. But most people don't realize is how the entire system works together to manage emissions. So if you understand the big picture, you can troubleshoot problems faster and avoid unnecessary costs and repairs. So here is my best step-by-step breakdown of how your truck's after-treatment system actually works. And my mouth is getting dry. Booyah. All right. So it starts with the engine, where soot and NOx are created. The combustion process in the diesel engine produces 2 major pollutants. One is soot, particulate matter, tiny black carbon particles that would otherwise be pumped into the air, and NOx, nitrogen oxides, harmful gases created under high combustion temperatures. Both of these need to be dealt with before they exit the exhaust system. The EGR, or the exhaust gas recycler, lowers NOx by recirculating exhaust gases. Before the exhaust even reaches the DPF, some of it's recycled back into the engine through the exhaust gas recirculation, or EGR system. This reduces combustion temperatures, which reduces NOx emissions. If the EGR clogs up, it forces more NOx into the after-treatment system, putting extra strain on the SCR system later on. So back to this question, or this comment about like really burning more DEF than you normally would. I'm wondering if you might have an EGR cooler issue, which is why I was suggesting looking at the diagnostics and seeing what the ppm, or parts per million, of NOx coming off the engine. The thing is, you might be burning or consuming more DEF because the truck is desperately trying to keep up with a high amount of NOx coming off of the engine. So the DOC's job is to, so after it goes through the EGR in the engine, the exhaust then goes to the turbo, and then down into the first part of the emission system. Well, second, if you count the EGR cooler. It's going to hit the DOC, the diesel oxidation catalyst. The DOC's job is to convert carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide, burn off some hydrocarbons in the exhaust, and generate the heat needed for DPF regeneration. If the DOC face plugs or isn't working correctly, the regen process won't get hot enough to burn off soot, which leads to DPF clogging. It can also lead to DOC clogging. The DOC itself is actually one of the more expensive parts of your emission system, because it is impregnated with 3 very expensive catalytic metals, and those metals are, say it with me, platinum, palladium, and rhodium. I like saying that word. And those things, last I checked, rhodium was selling for $10,000 or $11,000 an ounce. So you might have, that's why that baby's expensive. So those metals are what produces the heat during the regen. And then next, after the DOC, is your DPF, or diesel particulate filter, and that captures soot and stores it, or basically captures soot and ash and stores the ash until a regen, or it'll store the soot until a regen. The regeneration is just basically a fancy word for getting hot, and the engine will do that automatically while you're just rolling down the road. It's called a passive or a rolling regen, where the engine will just rev up a little bit, and while you're going down the road, just to get enough heat to burn off any accumulated soot. or you can do it via a parked regen or forced regen. Those are a little more extreme. And what happens is that high temperature will turn the soot into its component gases, just like it was burning in your engine. And then those gases flow into the SCR, and they're basically processed and turned into nothing more than nitrogen and water. So the DPF, back to the DPF again, sits right after the DOC and is responsible for trapping soot so it doesn't exit the exhaust. So a lot of people think that, well, when you do a regen, it's just basically, it's pumping all that soot in the atmosphere. No, it's not. It's actually capturing that all. You should never see any soot in your tailpipe. You shouldn't see any smoke. So over time, the soot builds up inside the DPF and it needs to be burned off through a regeneration or regen process. And now, what is a regen process? The regen cycle is triggered when the truck's differential pressure sensors detect that the filter is full. Basically, it's monitoring the airflow and the entry of the DPF and the outlet of the DPF, except for on a Detroit engine, then it's actually measuring the pressure from the entry of the DOC or the inlet of the DOC to the outlet of the DPF. But most trucks just measure the pressure differential in the DPF. If it starts to have to push too hard to get air through or exhaust through the DPF, then the pressure differential is too high, and it'll say, hey, I feel like I can't breathe very well, and I need to do a quick regen, and it goes to the regen process, burns the soot off. When a regen is needed, the seventh injector, or the hydrocarbon doser, if you want to be technical about it, sprays a small amount of fuel into the exhaust stream. The seventh injector is normally located just after the turbo, and basically it's a little atomizer that will squirt some fuel in to the exhaust stream. That hot exhaust coming off the engine is real hot, but it's only going to be 700 or 800 degrees, which is hot enough to make a good pizza, but not hot enough to actually burn the soot off. In order to burn the soot off, you need to be approaching 1,000 degrees, somewhere between 980 and about 1,112 degrees to burn that soot off. And so that the DOC does the chemical magic to take the 700-800 degrees off the engine and boost it up to 1,000 degrees to make it hot enough to burn off the soot. Some of the trucks don't do it that way. There's some of the Hinos and the Suzus have what's called a burner down below. That's kind of that's rare. Other Cummins engines, especially the Cummins 6.7, doesn't have a seventh injector. Actually does what's called in-cylinder dosing, where they actually use the fuel injectors to dose the cylinders, blow a little extra fuel on the exhaust stroke, so that fuel won't burn, will just simply be sucked downstream into the exhaust system. But we're talking about the seventh injector here. Definitely having a seventh injector on the Detroits, on the Volvos, on the big Cummins, on the Packars, etc. So if your seventh injector is clogged, or you have an air system leak, or isn't getting enough fuel, regens won't be effective, and your DPF will clog up faster. Moving on, SCR, selective catalytic reduction, reduces NOx, or nitrogen oxides, using DEF. And DEF, of course, we talked about before, is just simply a combination of two ingredients, urea and distilled water. And after the DPF, the exhaust is actually clean of any physical dirt, any particulate matter, but it still has NOx in it. We need to get that out of the exhaust. And it enters the selective catalytic reduction, or SCR system. Here, DEF, or diesel exhaust fluid, is injected into the exhaust system, where it reacts with the NOx to convert it into nitrogen and water vapor. That's it. If the DEF system has crystallization, clogged lines, or bad NOx sensors, you'll get SCR efficiency codes, DEF quality warnings, and eventually a D rate. Also, if at some point your DPFs are cracked, they can let soot bypass and sneak into the SCR. And over time, that soot will build up and will affect the efficiency of the SCR, because it's coated with soot. That's called poisoning. And your SCR will stop working at that point and start getting codes there. So if you've got SCR codes and soot in your tailpipe, the problem with the SCR is probably just that it's full of soot. It needs to be cleaned out. You know what to do. 404-999-1361. Have us take care of that. Also, sometimes over time, the DEF residue will build up in your SCR, causing it to not work as well. And again, we can help you with that as well. So what happens when something goes wrong? Now you see how everything all works together. You can probably guess what happens when just one part of the system fails. So if your EGR system clogs, higher NOx levels overload the SCR system, leading to DEF problems or high DEF consumption and D rates. DOC phase plug, regen temperatures stay too low, so soot builds up and does not burn off the DPF. Seventh injector failure, regen doesn't happen correctly and the DPF clogs up fast. Clogged DPF, back pressure increases, reducing fuel economy, engine performance. Bad injectors, low compression, excess fuel in the exhaust creates too much soot, overloading the DPF and DOC. Also, excess fuel in the exhaust can produce high temperatures and can thermally shock your DPF, causing it to crack, or thermally damage your SCR and causing it to no longer work. SCR system issues, DEF quality codes, NOx conversion errors, and eventually a power D rate. The DPF is only one part of a much bigger system, and a problem anywhere upstream, and usually upstream, can cause it to clog or fail. That's why it's important to diagnose the root cause instead of just replacing or deleting filters and sensors. If your truck is constantly going in regen, throwing emissions codes, or not performing like it should, give us a call at 404-999-1361. Give us a call or a text anytime, day or night, 404-999-1361. We'll help you get to the bottom of it before you waste money on unnecessary repairs. All right. Let me quick check to see if anything else came in here from YouTube or... Hold on a second here. Ooh. Hang on. So why is it doing that to me? Well, that wants me to log in. Okay. Well, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Well, let me log in quick. All right. Honestly, I don't know why. Anyway, sorry about that. I was hoping to answer some questions from YouTube, but it's not letting me log in. So if you ask me a question, I'm not going to see it live, at least not right now, but I will pick it up later, and I can definitely answer you there. All right, what do we have here from number 4 from Mr. or Miss Haktua? What's the new gas particulate filter going in the Ford Maverick's same cleaning process? Gasoline particulate filters, GPF. GPFs are becoming more common in modern vehicles as manufacturers work to meet the ever-increasingly strict emissions regulations. While diesel engines have relied on DPFs, or diesel particulate filters, for years now, gasoline engines are now facing similar requirements to reduce particulate matter, or PM, emissions. And this is particularly, I can't even say that, relevant for direct injection gasoline engines, which produce more fine particulate matter emissions than older port injected gasoline engines. So this is kind of that trade-off where they are doing the fuel injection in gasoline engines a little differently now, and that's causing a bit more of the particulate matter to come out of the exhaust. So now they need to take care of that. So what vehicles have GPFs? The GPFs, or gasoline particulate filters, are already standard in many European and Chinese vehicles. Believe it or not, China is really starting to crack down on their emissions. I was in China in 2017. They definitely weren't cracking down on it then because the air was a mess. However, they are also becoming more common in North America, particularly as manufacturers prepare for the much tighter regulations in 2027, which is not far away. That will be at 2027 before you know it. So the vehicles using GPFs right now, the Ford Maverick, and other 2024 Ford models now included GPF, Volkswagen, Audi, Mercedes-Benz and BMW, Aston Martin, the James Bond car. So even the high performance vehicles have GPF, and Volvo and all the others are putting GPF on. Currently, as of right now, GPF is not mandatory in the US, but as the EPA moves towards stricter emission standards, and those emission standards always do get stricter and not more lax, they are doing this to meet the standards of 2027 and beyond. So it's likely that more and more gasoline vehicles will include the GPF by default. How does a GPF work? A GPF functions similar to a DPF, except it's got a G instead of a D. gasoline instead of diesel in a diesel engine, but there are key differences in how it operates. The GPF captures the fine soot and particulate matter that results from gasoline combustion, prevents these particles from exiting the exhaust and being released into the air. And unlike DPFs, which require both passive and active regeneration to function, a GPF primarily relies on passive regeneration, which occurs naturally because gasoline engine runs at a much higher temperature than a diesel engine, meaning the soot burns off continuously under normal driving conditions. Active regeneration, which is needed with DPFs, is rare in GPFs. In the rare cases where it is required, it works similar to a diesel engine, using the engine adjustments to raise exhaust temperatures. What about cleaning? Is this going to mean that I'll be able to buy a private jet because everything's going to have a GPF on it? Under normal conditions, no. GPFs are designed to be maintenance free due to their ability to regenerate passively and due to the type of particulate matter that comes off the gasoline engine, which is there, but substantially less than diesel engine. However, if a vehicle is used for frequent short trips or experiences low exhaust temperatures for extended periods of time, it may not regenerate properly, leading to excessive soot buildup. If the GPF becomes clogged, DPF guys would be, a visit to us may be necessary. We should change our name to GPF guys. However, the GPFs only cost $88 to $150 a piece, so maybe it's not even worth cleaning. Just replace them. Now, that's actually at the manufacturing level, so I would imagine that the consumer price would be more, but yet you're talking about where a DPF might be a few $1,000s, a GPF might be a few $100s, so it's probably going to be something where you just replace it versus having to clean it. And of course, as they become more widespread, the cost of the GPF may decrease over time due to improved manufacturing efficiencies. So GPFs are here to stay, especially as the EPA tightens the noose around the emissions regulations in the US. Unlike diesel DPFs, GPFs don't require active regeneration as often, making them mostly maintenance free. If a GPF does clog, it may need professional cleaning or replacement. In my mind, probably replacement, but this would be considered rare under normal conditions. As more vehicles adopt this technology, it's important to understand how GPFs work to prevent unnecessary repairs and avoid driving habits that could lead to clogging issues. And if you have any other questions about a GPF, a DPF, a DTF, 404-999-1361. Call or text us anytime. If you call us right now, it's after hours. You'll actually end up talking to Lynn Diesel, who's our AI receptionist, and you can give her your name and number and other information, and we can get back to you and help you out. All right, we got number 5. For Mr. Jimrod, I have a question. I have a PACCAR MX-13 2019. They just clean the DPF filters, reset ash levels, and a regen, but still showing as soot level high. Any ideas what can be causing this issue? Replace the pressure sensor as well. I remember this guy. This is one where I think he was having low temperatures off the engine. But first off, this could be a variety of issues, so I'd love to see the exact fault codes you're getting. Email your fault codes to 404. Oh, no, don't email them to dispatch. Anybody can do this, actually. If you email your codes to dispatch@dpfguys.com, just make sure you give us some contact information. We can look at your codes and get back to you. Or text a picture of your codes to 404-999-1361. Or text your codes to 404-999-1361, or call us at 404-999-1361. Even if you call now and talk to Lynn, she can ask you what your codes are. You can tell her, you can even ask her about the codes, and she might even be right. She's learning. And we can help you to diagnose that problem much more precisely. That being said, let's go over the most common causes of this issue and how to troubleshoot it. Number 1, verify the pressure differential sensor that you put on there is reading correctly. Since you already replaced the DPF pressure differential sensor, the next step is to confirm that it's actually reading correctly using your diagnostic software. Unfortunately, just like anything, you might have got a bad sensor out of the box, or you might have a hose that's got a crack in it. It's always possible. But even with a new sensor, the readings can be off to incorrect calibration or bad wiring. A faulty or misreading sensor will falsely report high soot levels, triggering regen requests even if the DPF is new or clean. So what to check? Use diagnostic software to compare pre-DPF and post-DPF pressure readings. Make sure the sensor hoses aren't kinked or cracked or clogged. That can also be, man, that can be you're really chasing that one. But just check to make sure that you're not having any trouble with hose, because hose ain't nothing but trouble. So even minor restrictions or cracks can cause false readings. Verify that the ECM is actually reading the new sensor correctly. A software issue could be misinterpreting data. Software update, the hidden fix. I've seen weird issues magically disappear with a simple update of all of the ACM, ECM, all of the control modules. PACCAR frequently releases software patches that fix sensor misreads, incorrect soot calculations, and regen logic errors. So you literally could be suffering from nothing more than needing a software update. Get the update done, your problem may go away. If your truck is still running older software, maybe using outdated regen logic that isn't correctly resetting soot levels after a cleaning. Check with the dealer or repair shop to confirm your ECM and ACM. All of your control modules are up to date. The software is up to date. If your after treatment system hasn't been updated in a while, do it now. It could instantly fix the issue and save yourself a lot of headache. Exhaust leaks. You could simply have a small exhaust leak, or maybe somebody forgot to put a gasket in the right place, or a gasket is cracked or kinked or something. A small exhaust leak before the DPF could throw off pressure readings, tricking the ECM into thinking the DPF is full when it's actually perfectly fine. The most common places for leaks in the PACCAR are the bellows pipe between the turbo and the dock, or the DOC. This can develop hairline cracks and vent exhaust before it reaches the sensors. Loose clamps or gaskets on the DOC, DPF, or SCR, even a teensy tiny small leak can affect the pressure differential readings. So just eyeball it. Perform a visual and smoke test on the exhaust system. Pay close attention to the turbo outlet pipe and after treatment clamps. What else could it be? Failed or sticking seventh injector. If the seventh injector isn't spraying fuel properly, the truck will fail to reach proper regen temperatures, leaving soot behind even after the regen cycle. Of course, you can just simply hook up a computer, put the truck into regen, make sure the temperatures look right. You're going to see about 800, well, like, no, you're going to see 900 degrees off the engine in that range, 1,000. And you should see 980, 1,000, 1,100 degrees after the DOC. If you're not seeing that, there's something, the reason you're having these regen issues is because you're not getting the temperatures you need. On some of the PACCAR MX-13 models, the seventh injector is controlled by compressed air, meaning the air system leaks. If the air system leaks, or frozen air lines, that can affect that performance. Run a diagnostics test on the seventh injector to make sure it's spraying correctly. Look for air leaks in the after treatment system, after treatment dosing system, meaning the fuel supply for the seventh injector. If your model of truck uses compressed air, check for carbon buildup on the seventh injector nozzle, which can prevent proper fuel atomization. Turbo EGR or valve adjustment issues causing excess soot production. If your engine is producing too much soot upstream, the DPF will clog up quickly again, even after a cleaning. What are the possible causes? There's a few of them. Overfueling from bad injectors. If an injector is failing, it can dump excess fuel into the cylinders, creating excessive soot. Low compression due to needing a valve adjustment. Misadjusted valve leads to poor combustion and excess soot production. Stuck EGR valve. If your EGR valve is stuck open, it can dump too much exhaust into the intake, reducing combustion efficiency and causing more soot buildup. Turbocharger issues. If the turbo isn't producing proper boost, the engine will run rich, creating higher soot levels. So what can you do? Run an injector balance test to check for overfueling. If your truck is near 500,000 miles, really consider a valve adjustment, especially on a Detroit, which you don't have, but on the Detroits, those valve adjustments are a big deal. Check the EGR function and clean or replace the EGR valve if needed. And so what should you do next? If you're still seeing high soot levels after a fresh DPF cleaning and a regen, here is what I recommend. Well, email or text your codes to DPF guys. You can email us at dpfguys.com, or call us or text us at 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361. Verify that your differential pressure sensors are reading correctly. Even a new sensor can be giving bad data, or maybe a harness issue or whatever it might be. Check for exhaust leaks, especially at the turbo downpipe and all of your after treatment clamps. Make sure your ECM software is fully up to date. Packer software updates can really fix many regen logic errors. Run a diagnostic on the 7th injector to confirm it's dosing properly. If you're producing excessive soot, check your injectors, valve adjustment, and turbo performance. Don't waste time guessing. Reach out to us at 404-999-1361. Reach out to us at 404-999-1361. Call us anytime, day or night, at night or on the weekends. You're going to talk to Lynn Diesel or leave us a voicemail, but we will get back to you even on the weekends. And let's help you figure it out before it costs you more in downtime, repairs, and pulling your hair out. All right, moving on. That was number 5. Number 6. Okay, this is a good one here. They're all good. I appreciate all these questions, every one of them. And anybody out there watching me on YouTube and sticking around, I really appreciate it. If you've asked me a question in the chat, I couldn't quite see it. In fact, I might just check my phone quick. But don't feel bad. I will get back to you even this evening via a quick response to your. So watch your YouTube channel for answers to your questions. Question number 6. Feeder the gears. How much ammonia does DEF put in the air every single year? I need to have a sip of my soup cocktail before I answer this one. Hang on. All right. So this is one of those gotcha questions that people throw around to try to, kind of try to discredit the model, the modern diesel after treatment system. But let's just get right down to what the facts are and set the record straight. DEF does not put ammonia into the air if the system is working properly. Again, let me repeat that. Using DEF does not put any ammonia into the atmosphere if the system is working properly. So how this all works is the DEF, or diesel exhaust fluid, is a mixture of, say it with me, 67.5% deionized water and 32.5% urea, which is the nitrogen. When injected into the exhaust system, it goes through a chemical reaction in the SCR, or selective catalytic reduction system, that reduces NOx. NOx is nitrogen oxide into harmless nitrogen and water vapor. Step by step, DEF is sprayed into the hot exhaust stream before it enters the SCR. That heat converts the urea into ammonia and carbon dioxide. The ammonia reacts with the NOx in the SCR catalyst, breaking it down into nothing more than nitrogen, N2, and water, H2O. In a properly functioning system, there is no excess ammonia released into the air because it is catalyzed right in the SCR canister itself by what's called an ammonia slip filter. So yes, there's a brief moment where inside the SCR, it does create ammonia, or NH3, as part of the process. However, the secondary part of that catalyst, which is built into every modern SCR, takes that ammonia and ensures that it does not escape into the exhaust system. If everything is working correctly, you should never smell ammonia or see anything coming out of the tailpipe. Any ammonia that is present for a fraction of a second inside the system gets converted into nitrogen and water, and it doesn't escape from the exhaust. The only time you'll smell that ammonia smell is if the SCR system is malfunctioning and isn't processing DEF correctly, or for some reason the DEF is just spraying like a madman, and there's just too much going into the, it's overspraying the DEF, overdosing the DEF. If there's an injector or somehow a sensor issue and too much DEF is being sprayed, it can't keep up with it, so you might have some uncatalyzed ammonia getting out. But under normal conditions, if everything is working, no ammonia is being released into the air. And if you are behind your truck and you smell ammonia and has some other codes, it's telling you that the SCR is not working as it should, or potentially your DEF delivery system, your pump, your doser is over delivering DEF, or you have sensors, you have NOx sensors that are reading improperly, and the truck is sending more DEF into the system than it should because it's getting bad data from the sensor. So DEF is not polluting the air with ammonia. If someone tells you otherwise, they either don't understand how the system works or they're trying to push a myth about after-treatment systems. The SCR system completes the reaction inside the catalyst, ensuring that all you get out of the exhaust is nitrogen and water vapor. Nothing else. Nothing else. If you're smelling ammonia or seeing anything unusual coming from your exhaust, you've got a system issue that needs to be diagnosed. Call us at 404-999-1361. Call us at 404-999-1361. You can even call us right now on a Sunday night, and you will talk to our phone system for a minute, and they will send you over to either a voicemail if you want to leave us a message that we will get and we can respond to. You can text us at the 404-999-1361. Text us at 404-999-1361. Or you can go right to Lynn Diesel, and Lynn can take your information, and we will get back to you and help you figure out what's going on. All right, question number 7. I have a question. What would cause a DPF to clog up and make the engine sputter and die? That's a good one. It's not good to happen to you, but it's a good one. If your DPF is so clogged that it's actually killing the engine, you've got a serious restriction in the exhaust system. A completely blocked DPF is like a cork in the tailpipe, like a potato, like a banana in your tailpipe, like in Beverly Hills Cop. Did you put the banana in the tailpipe? Preventing the engine from pushing out exhaust. If the exhaust can't flow, the engine can't breathe, and eventually it just chokes itself out. So what would cause a DPF to get this bad? Well, first of all, ignoring regens for too long. If your truck warns you when it's time for a regen, but those warnings are ignored or canceled, if you stop the regen, if it really wants to do one, the DPF just keeps packing in more soot until it's totally plugged. That usually isn't the issue, but that can happen. That happens a lot with off-road equipment, with construction stuff, skid steers and things like that, where they'll tell the unit will want to go into regen, and they'll want to keep digging the hole or whatever it is, and they'll bypass the regen. So if your truck calls for regens way too often, that's the sign of an upstream problem. Too much idle time or low temperature driving. Diesels need heat to keep the emission systems working right. I actually got that comment from a TikTok live a few minutes ago. If the truck idles too much or is mostly used for short trips where the exhaust never gets hot enough, it won't be able to burn off soot properly, leading to rapid clogging. A failed 7th injector can cause this. If the 7th injector is clogged, you're not spraying fuel properly during the regeneration, the DPF isn't getting hot enough to burn off the soot, causing it to pack in more until it clogs up completely. Some trucks use compressed air to help the 7th injector atomize the fuel. So if you've got air leaks, that could also be a factor. Could be bad sensors. Faulty differential pressure sensor can tell the ECM and DPF that everything is fine when it's actually filling up fast. A bad exhaust gas temperature sensor can prevent the system from going into regen when it needs to. And this can lead to a slow buildup of soot until the filter is completely plugged. Leaking or stuck open EGR valve. If the EGR valve is stuck open, it dumps too much exhaust gas into the intake, reducing combustion efficiency and creating excessive soot, which can clog the DPF. The same goes for an EGR cooler full of carbon. It leads to more soot, more frequent regens, or regen failures, more importantly. Biggest one, failing injectors and valve adjustment issues. If your injectors are overfueling because they're wearing out, that creates excessive soot and also can crack your DPF due to excessive heat, but it'll definitely overwhelm the DPF quickly. This will definitely be an issue on box trucks with the Cummins 6.7 engine, Freightliner M2, International 4300, Ford F750, and the newer Enos, all box trucks with the Cummins 6.7. Those engines with the Cummins 6.7 Cummins and those box trucks will, at 250,000 miles, the injectors will wear out and you will just build up soot and build up soot. Cummins 6.7s are notorious for fuel injectors failing around 250,000 miles, leading to cracked DPFs, clogged DPFs, plugged up DOCs, plugged up EGR coolers. And so so on and so forth. But why is the engine dying? So when the DPF is completely clogged, the back pressure becomes extreme, making it impossible for the engine to push out the exhaust, creates several major problems. Airflow restriction chokes the engine. If the exhaust can't exit, fresh air can't come in, and the engine starts sputtering and losing power and eventually won't even crank over. Excessive back pressure damages sensors and components. Pressure and temperature sensors can be bent or broken, leading to false readings that make the problem even worse. And in severe cases, the engine can stall and refuse to start. If the ECM detects too much back pressure, it can completely shut down fuel delivery and leave you stranded. Some trucks, I know the Cummins with the X15, if the DPF gets too plugged, it won't do a regen because it worries about the DPF being plugged and that hot exhaust coming off the DOC during a regen can't go anywhere. So it'll because it hits the DPF and that's plugged up like a cork. So that pressure is going to start to sneak out in other places. If that 1,000-degree heat, 1,000-degree exhaust sneaks out of the clamp, the connections between the components of your DPF system, it can start your truck on fire, and it's really bad. So there's times when your truck will literally not regen if your DPF is too dirty, as just a safety issue. So if the truck is still running, get it to a shop, our shop, hopefully, if you're close by or can get here ASAP before it shuts down completely. If it won't start, the DPF needs to be removed and professionally cleaned or replaced. Check your 7th injector, your EGR valve, sensors to make sure the root cause is fixed before reinstalling your clean or new DPF. And always call us or text us at 404-999-1361. If you need help diagnosing the issue, no matter where you are, and need to set up professional cleaning if you're in the Atlanta area, we are here to help you out. 404-999-1361. Call or text us anytime. So a completely clogged DPF doesn't just hurt performance. It can shut your truck down entirely. The real question isn't just why it clogged, but why the engine is producing so much soot in the first place. Fix the root cause, or you'll be right back in the same spot again in a few weeks, or even less, a few days. All right, let's move on here. Number 8. Okay, I have a 2010 6.4 with 125,000 miles. Started to see lots of smoke when I go into regen. Any thoughts on this? Think cleaning filter or something else? So you should never see any smoke during a regen ever. One of the things on that 6.4 is the fuel pump. Make sure you don't have something going on in the fuel pump, because those fuel pumps have a tendency to, I think they actually had a recall on them. The people that know Fords know all about this. So you want to get this looked at really quick. So if you have a fuel pump that's going bad, it's going to start falling apart and sending chunks of itself downstream into all the parts where it shouldn't go, and can really cause a lot of damage. Check your fuel pump to make sure that there's not something going on there. But you should never see any smoke during a regen ever. If your DPF is working properly, it traps all the soot and burns it off inside the filter. No smoke will ever be coming out of your filter or coming out of your exhaust under any circumstances if your DPF is okay. So if you are seeing smoke, especially black smoke, which I think also means that they elected a new pope, or maybe didn't, you likely have a serious engine issue that has already cracked your DPF. That smoke shouldn't be getting through, which means if you're seeing it, the filter is damaged and now acting as nothing more than a straight pipe. So what's happening inside your after treatment system? Cracked DPF. It's like if you've got an old style vacuum with a vacuum cleaner with a filter in it, or a shop vac with a filter in it. If you're vacuuming, your shop or your carpet, and you see a bunch of, dust coming out of your vacuum cleaner, that's telling you that the filter is cracked because it's not catching the dust. In this case, the filter in your truck is catching soot, but it's a very similar thing. Or if you got a coffee filter that's got a rip in it and you got coffee grounds in your coffee, it's the same thing. So if your DPF is cracked, soot and raw exhaust are blowing straight through instead of getting filtered. This can also poison your SCR. The soot is coating and clogging your SCR, which will lead to SCR efficiency codes, NOx conversion failures, and eventually a derate. And then you will lose regen control. The ACM is expecting a clean burn, but if the DPF isn't working, the truck will just keep trying and failing to complete regens. So 125,000 miles is low. This definitely sounds like you might have some sort of engine failure going on. So a 2010 6.4 Power Stroke with only 125,000 miles really should not have any after treatment issues unless something upstream, meaning in the engine, is failing and pushing too much soot into the system. The 6.4 Power Stroke is known for several serious problems, and you're likely dealing with one of them. So what are these problems? Power Stroke engine failures, 6.4 specifically. My daughter just got one with a 6.4, and I'm trying to make sure that it keeps running. So what problems can cause excessive soot and DPF cracking? Oil dilution from fuel in the crankcase. The 6.4 has a major issue with fuel leaking past the piston rings and contaminating the engine oil. This leads to poor lubrication, excessive wear in the rocker arms, and eventually engine failure. If your truck has been burning oil, check that, or running rough, you may already have significant engine damage. I cross my fingers and hope you don't, but you may. Failing high-pressure fuel pump, the HPFP, or injectors. The high-pressure fuel pump can cause overfueling, which leads to excessive soot in the exhaust. Again, that 6.4 is notorious for that fuel pump issue. It's often recommended that you simply replace the fuel pump with an upgraded one. But when that thing goes bad, it causes all sorts of issues downstream. Also, it can lock up, twist apart things in your engine. It's all bad. Leaking injectors can cause incomplete combustion, dumping unburned fuel into the exhaust, rapidly clogging and overheating and cracking your DPF. The symptom of that is seeing smoke out your tailpipe. If you walk around behind your truck and check out your tailpipe, if there's any black soot in there, you finger your tailpipe, nothing wrong with that, and your finger comes out black, you have something wrong with your DPF, and that is normally pointing to something going on in your engine. Check for fuel dilution in your oil. If you find it, you have a fueling issue. EGR coolers can also lead to coolant in the exhaust. So the 6.4 uses actually 2 EGR coolers, and they are notorious for leaking coolant into the exhaust. So coolant contamination in the DPF can create white smoke, not so much black smoke, that some people mistake for steam, but it's actually a sign of severe internal engine damage. If your truck is losing coolant, but you don't know where it's going, check your EGR system immediately. Turbocharger issues and exhaust leaks. The 6.4 has a variable geometry turbo that can fail or leak, leading to high soot levels and excessive back pressure on the exhaust. The up pipes connecting the manifolds to the turbo can also crack, causing power loss and excessive soot production. Oil cooler failure. The oil cooler of the 6.4 is another weak point, and when it fails, it can cause overheating and internal engine damage, which again a damaged engine can then in turn damage your DPF system. If the truck has been running hot or showing erratic oil pressure, you might have a failing oil cooler contributing to your DPF issues. So what should you do next? Stop driving it until you figure it out. Don't make it worse. If your DPF is cracked, continuing to drive will poison the SCR and cause even more expensive repairs. Check for fuel in the oil. Check to see if you're making oil. If you check your oil and it's higher than it should be, and also pull your dipstick, smell the oil. If it smells like diesel, you have an injector fuel problem, and which is causing the excessive soot. Have us do an oil sample off that thing. We can tell you if there's anything in that oil that shouldn't be, including bits of metal coming from a failing fuel pump. Pressure test the EGR system for leaks. If you've lost coolant recently, it's possible the EGR cooler is leaking into the exhaust. Check for turbo exhaust leaks. Inspect the up pipes, clamps, and turbo system for cracks or signs of leaks. The DPF needs to be removed and inspected, probably replaced if it's cracked. No amount of cleaning will fix it. You're looking at a DPF replacement. We do have replacements for that. We can also clean them on any of these medium duty trucks. So just call us, 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361, or shoot us a text. And and we'll help you diagnose this issue. We'll walk you through the best steps to figure out the root cause before you waste any money replacing parts you don't need, or not replacing the parts you really, really do need and causing bigger problems down the road. This is not a simple DPF cleaning issue. I wish it was. You've got a serious engine issue, fueling, something's going on upstream, and it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. If you just replace the DPF without fixing the root cause, you'll be right back in the same spot, literally in hundreds or just a couple thousand miles. So get ahead of this now before it spirals into an even bigger repair. And again, how do you get a hold of us? Memorize it, 404-999-1361. Screenshot that, baby, and save it in your phone. All right, we got number 9. Oh, another one of these. How much pollution is made from making all the shit to make a DEF system work? How much pollution is coming from the plastic jugs? Talking about the plastic jugs of DEF. So, great question, man. You really, yeah, you got me. I mean, what about all that packaging? Those poor plastic jugs, the real victims are those plastic jugs. Look, I love your dedication to the environment. Clearly, you care a lot about pollution, which I fully support. But that's what, well, I always tell people, skip the plastic jugs and get your DEF at the pump. Now, assuming you can get fresh DEF at the pump. But if you get it at the pump in bulk or buy it by the, the industrial bulk container or by the barrel, no wasted packaging, no wasted plastic in the landfills. And best of all, it's usually cheaper too. Now, as far as how much pollution is created from making the DEF system, the reality is it's a fraction of what would be pumped into the air if we went back to pre-DEF diesel emissions. And, yes, it's a compromise. There's energy used to manufacture, DEF tanks, injectors, sensors, and yes, plastic DEF jugs exist. I mean, you see them. But if we didn't have DEF, every truck on the road would be putting out 90+% more NOx emissions than they do today. So if you're really concerned about plastic waste, I 100% respect that. Just make sure you're also concerned about the literal tons of toxic NOx and soot and everything else that would be going straight into the air without the DPF or diesel emission systems and DEF. So I'll make it easy for you. Save the planet, buy DEF at the pump. You are welcome. All right, moving on. If anybody has any questions and you're watching this, type it down below. I can't see the questions right now because something's broken. It wasn't before, but it's broken now. But I will read them and get back to you. If you want to ask me a question via text, please text me your questions at 404-999-1361. Just make sure you give me your name and location so that I know who I'm talking to. All right, this is from Johnny Hopper, who happens to be a dear friend, and not just that, he's actually one of the owners of DPF Guys, one of the original founders with me. He's behind the scenes making all the wheels turn, and I am very lucky to have him as my partner and in crime here. So he's looking at buying a used F-250 diesel. Is there any way of knowing or signs of DPF, DOC, et cetera, is going to need cleaning or replacement in the near future? Now, the details on this F-250, it sounds like it's just a badass truck, but it only has like 80,000 miles on it, so it should be just fine. So first off, great choice. Looking at an F-250 diesel with a 6.7 power stroke. It's one hell of a truck, and when properly retained and maintained, is probably going to last longer than you do. Powerful, reliable, fully loaded, but like any modern diesel, it's got a few things you need to stay ahead of to keep it running right. Let's go over those. So if you want to avoid DPF, DOC, or fuel system headaches down the road, here's what to check before you buy and how to keep that truck running great for years to come. Biggest red flag that a used F-250's after treatment system is already in trouble is frequent regens. And ask the seller how often it regens. If they don't know, plug in a scanner and look at the soot load data. If it's doing regens every 100 miles or less, the system is already struggling. In the case of Mr. Hopper's truck, that's not the case. But if you're looking at a pickup truck that was owned by a construction company or something, look at the regen levels. Look for excessive white ash buildup in the DPF. Now, again, you can't really see that unless you actually look in the, pull the DPF off. So that's not really something you could do. We could do. If you can pull data from the truck, check the DPF soot and ash levels. Ash is permanent, doesn't burn off. If it's full of ash, the filter may need cleaning or replacement soon. Check for any, and also check the tailpipe. Make sure there's no soot on the tailpipe. If there's any soot on the tailpipe of a diesel truck, that tells you that the DPF is damaged and needs to be replaced. Check for any DEF or NOx related codes. Again, with a scanner, the truck has a history of DEF system issues, SCR efficiency codes, or NOx sensor failures. That could mean the emission system has been neglected. And oftentimes the emission system is almost always neglected. So, but in this case, the truck is almost still probably smells new inside. Scan for DPF pressure sensor readings. With the differential pressure sensor is giving false data, the truck may not be regenerating properly, leading to rapid DPF clogging. Keeping your F-250's after treatment system healthy. If the truck checks out, you buy it. Here's how to keep it running like a beast and avoid costly DPF replacement. Use Clean Air Fleet. There it is. Use Clean Air Fleet diesel additive. The 6.7 Power Stroke is a high-pressure common rail engine, and it hates bad fuel. Clean Air Fleet improves combustion efficiency, meaning less soot production, which extends the life of your DPF, your DOC, and your SCR. Also, Clean Air Fleet emulsifies water, which is important because the engine fuel system is known for water-related failures. So on that 6.7 Power Stroke, use Clean Air Fleet, keep all that water out of the fuel. It is absolutely the best thing to do. Use only OEM Motorcraft air filters. Aftermarket air filters like Fram do not filter properly, throwing off the air-fuel ratio. In fact, what's interesting is, and don't use a K&N. It's not about do they filter enough. It's just that they might, the amount of air they let through does not meet the OEM standard. It'll either be too much or too little or God knows what, but it'll plug up your DPF. So, you know, spend the extra $13, get the OEM filter, and that'll be a big deal. Anybody with a late model, medium duty truck, F-250, Ram 2500, Ram 3500, don't use the Fram, don't use aftermarket air filters on those things. Use only OEM. An aftermarket air filter can plug up your DPF in a matter of hundreds of miles, and your warranty won't cover it. So yeah, it's Ford will not warranty DPF failures caused by cheap air filters. Spend the extra $10, get the OEM air filter. It is worth it. Keep your eye on your gauges on the turbo and the EGR system. A stuck open EGR valve or EGR cooler can dump excessive carbon into the exhaust stream, accelerating DPF clogging. Check for any EGR related codes or performance issues that could indicate excessive soot production. Drain your fuel water separator regularly. The 6.7 Power Stroke is known for CP4 pump failures. Now, we've talked about this. Water in the fuel is the #1 killer of these pumps. Drain the water separator at least once a week to avoid catastrophic fuel system failure. The CP4 pump issue. This is the biggest weak point in this particular truck, also in the 6.4. Ford used the Bosch CP4 high-pressure fuel pump, which is known to fail catastrophically if it even gets a little bit of water or air in the system. When it fails, it explodes, kaboom, and sends metal shavings throughout the entire fuel system, destroying everything. There was a recall on some models, and Ford has since moved to a different pump design in the newest of trucks. If your truck still has the older CP4, install the disaster prevention kit to catch debris before it takes out the entire system in the event that the fuel pump fails. So the F-250 Super Duty, great truck. Check the regen frequency. This is, again, if you're buying one, check the regen frequency, soot load, pressure sensor data before buying. Use the Clean Air Fleet additive if you do buy it to reduce soot and protect your fuel system. Only use OEM Motorcraft air filters. Cheap filters can ruin your DPF and in turn ruin your day. Keep an eye on EGR function and your turbo health. Drain the fuel water separator weekly to prevent the fuel pump issues. And follow those steps, and that truck will serve you well for many years to come. Now, if you have any questions or need a DPF or emissions help, whether it be on the F-250 or anything else, call us, text us, 404-999-1361. Again, 404-999-1361. Call or text us 24 hours a day. Someone or something will answer your questions. because we do our best to got you back. All right. That went quickly, at least for me. Anybody who has hung around for the entire show, I certainly appreciate it. I'm going to say thank you by offering you a 10% discount on the Clean Air Fleet fuel additive. So if you order the Clean Air Fleet fuel additive and say you had learned about it from the YouTube Live, we will give you a 10% discount on your first 4-gallon case. So there you have it. Your questions, my answers. Anybody who asked a question on Facebook or YouTube while this is going across, I apologize. I couldn't get to them right away. I will immediately, once I log off here, I'm going to check them and I'll respond to them. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments below or text your questions to 404-999-1361. Text your questions to 404-999-1361, or feel free to call us anytime, night or day. After hours, we'll be talking to Lynn Diesel, our AI receptionist, who we're just training on all of this. This AI stuff is a little spooky, but pretty cool. But if you just want to leave a voicemail, you can do that as well. So that's it. I'll be back next week to answer more of your questions. Make sure you subscribe to the DPF Guys YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, find us on TikTok if you haven't done so already, and follow us there. So thank you for watching, and see you next week.
Just clear skies ahead with DPF Guys. Your exhaust game's on tread. We got the tools, the skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF Guys, we got the fit so fine. Hit the road with confidence. Now the world's your shrine. Bring in that rig, let's get on track. Breathe it easy with no